Hey Lupus Chicks, it's Marisa, the founder of LupusChick.com. I just wanted to pop on really quick this week and I wanted to talk to you about your first rheumatology visit. So this video is part of our Lupus 101 series, which is basically for anyone that is experiencing symptoms potentially of lupus, is currently in the midst of being diagnosed, or even was just recently diagnosed. So these videos are really for you. So I want to talk really quickly about some just tips and pieces of advice for the very first time that you actually will go and see the rheumatologist. Now, there's a couple of different scenarios of why you're at this point. So either you've been feeling sick on and off for some point, for some length of time, and your family physician has referred you now to a rheumatologist, or possibly your internist or family physician has already done a little bit of the blood work and it's come back positive in some way and you're showing symptoms. So again, you're being referred to a rheumatologist to get an actual diagnosis. Other instances could be maybe you were hospitalized, maybe you were in the ER and you were told that you need to see a rheumatologist, or possibly referred from an ER, or you have an insurance plan that you're able to just go without a referral, and it was recommended that you see a rheumatologist. So here you are. Now, the thing, I have some notes here. So the thing is, rheumatology is a specialty of medicine, and it's not the easiest, although it can happen. I've had some really great rheumatologists in the past 17 years that I've had lupus, but it's not always the case that you're going to call them and be able to get an appointment quickly. So I would always recommend, ask them if you can go on a cancellation list. I usually typically will call on a regular basis to see if anyone just happened and maybe just cancel that day. Because sometimes there could be a long gap. I mean, I've heard waits for rheumatology anywhere from a couple weeks to 8 or 9 months. So obviously if you're really sick, that's a very long time to wait. And there are certain cities in the U.S. where there aren't a lot of rheumatologists. I've been really lucky to live in major cities, but I know people that sometimes there's only 1 or 2 rheumatologists in their city, so it can be a little bit difficult. So I want you to be able to make the most out of that appointment, out of, maybe 15, 20 minutes that you have, if you're lucky. So I have a couple of notes here, and the first thing I wrote down was, it's highly unlikely that all of the symptoms that you have will be there the day that you actually go to the doctor. Maybe your rash might actually still be there, but if you have been having symptoms of lupus for some time, you'll see that they kind of go on and off. It's like a roller coaster. Before I was officially diagnosed, I'd have days or weeks where I'd have pain, I'd have fever, I would have rashes, I would get mouth sores, and then it would just clear up. And then I would have weeks or months where I felt great, and you had no idea that I just had all of those things going on. So I would really stress keeping a journal and making notes of different symptoms that you have, and sort of correlating them with, did you go out in the sun that afternoon and then you realize this rash popped up, or you got a fever, or you got mouth sores afterwards, or you felt really exhausted. Did some other type of life stressor happen and you realized that you sort of went into like this flare up, and all the symptoms that you had have gotten worse. So absolutely write those things down. Some other things you want to keep in mind, what medicines are you taking? It's not like the most common thing, but there are certain medicines that can cause like a drug-induced lupus, that you can actually get all the symptoms of lupus. And these will typically go away once you stop that medication. So if you're on different medications, you want to tell your rheumatologist. Also, other illnesses that you might have. So for me, I was already sort of full of like autoimmune diseases. I had asthma, I have allergies, I have something called urticaria. So I already was showing that my autoimmunity had an issue. And I expressed that to my doctors. They were well aware I had grown up with a lot of different health issues. So make note of that. The other thing, and I didn't even realize this connection when I was younger and I was first getting diagnosed, is there anyone in your family that has lupus, that has rheumatoid arthritis, that has scleroderma, has fibromyalgia? These are definitely things that you are going to want to write down, and you're you're going to want to mention this to the rheumatologist as well. So it's believed that there is some genetic link. It isn't a high percentage, but sometimes, this can run in the family if parents have it, and then children might get it, or if you have a sibling that has it, there's a percentage that you might get it. So I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember offhand these percentages. You can research that online. But again, so you want to kind of, mark all of this stuff down and mention it to the rheumatologist. Now, when you actually are in the appointment, so the way that a lupus diagnosis works, and I will say, I've said this in other videos, lupus is often called the great mimicker because there are a lot of different illnesses and diseases where you get fatigue, you get fevers, you just don't feel well, you feel like you're getting sick, you have muscle pain. So, if you present with those different symptoms at first, the first thing that the doctor, and especially if you don't have the rash, the first thing, they may not think of lupus. I had the flu really bad a few years ago, and it was exactly the same, exhaustion, body pain, fevers. I mean, it was, I couldn't tell at first, was I having a lupus flare-up or was I actually really sick? But anyway, that's a whole other story because that was a hot mess. So when you are actually getting diagnosed, what the doctors do, the rheumatologists, is they use a lupus criteria. And this is a criteria of 11 different symptoms or blood markers. And you need to have at least 4 of those. And your doctor will assess all of your symptoms. If you have a rash, maybe you're having shortness of breath, maybe you're having severe fatigue, fevers, maybe you're having the mouth or nose sores, maybe you're getting chest pain, maybe you're having kidney issues. So they'll go over your symptoms with you, and they will also do some different blood work. Now, the more traditional testing of lupus is you'll have multiple tubes of blood. I think the first time I ever went, I want to say I had at least 11 or 12 tubes of blood. Now, sometimes it's a little bit different depending on your doctor. So things that they will test for are your ANA, your SED rate, which is a test for inflammation, double-strand DNA, or anti-double-strand DNA, which is basically a test to see if you have autoantibodies in your body, which means that your body is failing to recognize that it's you, and it starts to see your body as foreign. Also, usually a C-reactive protein, complements like C3, C4. They'll do a regular CBC. Some will also check, well, not some, they will also check your kidney panels. So just get ready for some blood work. Now, what I will say, in the past, I've talked about it on Lupus Chick, there is a company called Exagen. It's EXAGEN.com. They have a test called Avise CTD for connective tissue disease. And I love this test. I love the way the results are presented. It's really an accurate test, and it doesn't just test for lupus. It tests for other illnesses that are very similar and just are related. And it's 1 tube of blood, which is amazing. Now, here's the thing. Not every rheumatologist uses this test. It's I learned about it about 3 years ago, but it's definitely grown. The really cool thing is you can go on their website, you can go to Avise CTD, and you can email them, you can call them, you can request a slip to go right to your doctor, your rheumatologist, and you can get, ask them if you can get that test to see what's happening. And, we partnered with them in the past. I love their test. I've been to their facility out in Carlsbad, out in California. It's an incredible research laboratory. I don't get paid for talking about them or, anything like that. It's just when you're constantly giving blood and you're not feeling well, to only have to give 1 tube of blood is amazing, and to have an incredibly accurate result. So it's just something that I like to share with people. Now, so your doctor will use the results of the blood test and combine that with the symptoms that you're having and see if they can make a lupus diagnosis. Now, I can't remember all the 11 criteria, so I want to read them to you. You can find them on our website, lupuschick.com. But these are the 11 SLE, systemic lupus, that criteria that rheumatologists use, and you need to have at least 4 of these. So one is the butterfly-shaped rash. We've talked about that on the other videos, where it sort of starts on the bridge of your nose and then it goes out in the shape of a butterfly. 2 is a discoid skin rash. So those are different like red patches. When I was first diagnosed, I had them here mostly on the trunk of my body. And then I had a little bit also on my face. Photosensitivity, an unusual reaction to sunlight. So for me, growing up in Fort Lauderdale, we noticed since I was little that every time I would go in the sun, I would get a rash. I would get like this weird fever a couple of hours later. But most of all, I would get so tired. Like it wasn't normal. I was a little kid. And my friends were able to go after a whole day in the sun. And I'd be in bed for the next 3 days. So that's photosensitivity. And it doesn't just happen with the sun. It can also happen with UV lighting. Like some people, depending on where they work, if they're under UV lights all the time, like fluorescence and whatnot, they can get symptoms if they're really sensitive. Arthritis, so tenderness, swelling, cardiopulmonary involvement. So, you know, lupus can affect the lining around the heart and the lungs. And that's obviously diagnosed through different types of tests. Neurologic disorders, things like seizures. You'll hear the word like brain fog a lot with people that have lupus. There can be some brain involvement. Kidney disorders, again, this will be tested with usually urine specimens. You might do like a 24-hour urine. You'll do different blood work, things like that. Hematologic disorders. I don't know why I can't speak today. So for me personally, lupus always attacks my blood. I've had blood clots. I've had small strokes years ago. If you've followed my story, you know I used to be in a wheelchair. Thank you, Jesus, that I am not anymore. I've had anemia of chronic disease for years. I've had to have iron IVs for the past, 12 years. My body just does not hold on to it. This could be different types of anemia. This could be low platelet counts, low white blood cell counts, things like that. Also, positive antibodies to double-stranded DNA. So that's the blood test that I was telling you about. And also a positive ANA. Now, you know, people say, oh, I have a positive ANA, I must have lupus. I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions. There's a lot of reasons why you can have a positive ANA. So doctors don't just go by that test. So it isn't the easiest diagnosis to get, but I've heard stories, you know, in research, they say sometimes it could take up to a year, sometimes it could take, you know, several years. But that's usually because your symptoms come and go. So if you have a very clear record and notation that, you know, I went out in the sun 7 times and got this rash, cell phone pictures, my gosh, like thank God for today and cell phone pictures, because I have had some crazy things happen that I've been able to document by photos and video and be able a couple of days later to show my doctor. And it was through that they were able to say, this is what you have. Like, absolutely. If you didn't show me that photo, you know, it wouldn't have been so clear. So keep notes, take photos. I know obviously like it's hard when you have a rash or you have different things going on with your body. I might pop up a picture here really quick if I can of when I'm editing this of one of my rashes that was ridiculous. But I'm so grateful now that I took those photos. So definitely, you know, consider that. And it's difficult, obviously, getting a diagnosis of lupus. It reminds me in the last week, I don't know how many of you saw the Selma Blair interview of getting that MS diagnosis, but when you're sick for so long, I mean, you start to think that you're losing your mind. And I think especially with women, a lot of our symptoms are disregarded, or, you know, we're being hypersensitive, or we're being hypochondriacs. But I know what I feel like on a good day, and I know when there's something wrong with my body. But when you don't feel like you're being heard, it is the worst feeling in the entire world, and you feel so alone, and you have no answers, and it's so frustrating. So there's almost like this relief, at least for me, that I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew that these symptoms were really happening, and there was a reason that they were happening. And now that I had the diagnosis, I could actually move forward and do something. and do something about it in terms of treatment and lifestyle and whatnot. So I just want to encourage you. That appointment's going to go really fast. There's going to be a lot of information thrown at you. Hopefully this video helps you prepare ahead of time so you'll already be familiar with like kind of what you're walking into. And I always recommend to be able to take notes if you can. You can ask them if you can record the appointment, just a voice recorder. Bring someone if you can. There are a lot of times, especially if I'm really sick, where I will be in an appointment and I just can't remember later on that day or a few days later everything that was said. But, if I bring my mom or I bring my husband or a friend, they remember little things that maybe I don't, because, there's times, say there is something wrong, say there is something in my blood work, or, I'm being diagnosed. Like recently I was just diagnosed with something else. And once I heard that other diagnosis, it's like I just shut down because my mind automatically went to like, oh my gosh, now I have this. And, like, is this going to happen? And so I kind of just shut down with everything else that the doctor was telling me. And I don't even remember what he was saying. It's like the Peanuts character. It's like, wah, wah, and you just like check out. But my husband was there, thankfully. And he heard everything. So we were able to talk about it more later on. So if you have someone that can go with you, that'd be awesome. If not, obviously just ask if you can record it with the audio on your phone, because, you may not remember later. There are some doctors that will let you do that. And then obviously there are some that won't. But I hope you have some tips from this that are helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can always ask me questions. You can go to lupuschick.com. And if you contact me through there, it goes right to my email. Also, visit us on Facebook at Lupus Chick, Instagram, Lupus Chick Official. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. We have videos coming out all of the time now, and some really cool interviews coming up, and different things about relationships, about caregiver, about treatment options, and clinical trials. And so we're sort of, making videos about everything. So I appreciate you listening. I hope that this was helpful, and good luck. And please reach out to me anytime you want. Bye.